Hello and welcome to Working Scientist, a Nature Careers podcast. I'm Julie Gould. This is the 5th episode of our career planning series. Each episode concludes with a sponsored slot from the International Science Council with support of the China Association for Science and Technology. The ISC is exploring how early and mid-career researchers can navigate their careers in a constantly evolving scientific landscape through conversations with emerging and established scientists. In this series so far, we've explored what career planning theory is, how career guidance practitioners apply the theory to their practice, some tips on how to get your own career planning started, and how others have planned their careers. But sometimes, even the best laid plans don't work out, and it can feel like your entire career has come to a halt. And that's what we're going to hear about today. How some scientists have dealt with projects that don't work out, political changes, financial crises, and leadership changes that have all influenced their career paths. And we'll also hear from a careers coach on how people can deal with career plans going awry. But don't forget to stay with us until the end to hear from the International Science Council. In your early career, one of the main influences and hopefully supporters that you'll have is your PhD supervisor. This person guides and mentors you through your research journey, helping you refine a research topic, develop methodologies, and stay on track towards completing your thesis. They'll hopefully provide feedback on research progress, writing and presentations, while also supporting your professional development. Ultimately, they can act as both an advisor and a collaborator to help you grow into an independent researcher. This means if you find a good one, you'll follow them, which is what Katja Loos did during her early career in chemistry. Katja is now a professor of polymer chemistry at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, but she started her chemistry career with a PhD in organic and polymer chemistry with Raymond Stadler at Johannes Gutenberg University Mainz in Germany in 1996.
I started my PhD already in Mainz, and he decided to take a new, very good position at the University of Bayreuth. So basically, in the beginning of my PhD, he decided to move, and of course the group needs to move with him. And then, we basically just moved. And he had cancer at really such an aggressive form. Yeah, I still remember it. It was quite shocking. So in the matter of weeks, from a healthy person, he was dead.
So not only was she in a new city and at a new university, but she was also now without a supervisor. This was not what she had planned. Katja and her research peers all had a lot of concerns about their future.
The question is, will the university help you? Will they even continue to pay you? Because in Germany we are paid. We don't have scholarships or something. And so there are quite some and I mean, if you're in the beginning, you basically could go somewhere else and start. But somehow I decided to stay, and we also got quite some help from people at the university. So the people at the university helped us to keep our, let's say, positions. And also from professors from inside and outside. And then, of course, also my the next supervisor, Axel Müller, who took the position. So it was really great how actually the support system helped us.
No, luckily you had the support from the people around you. Did you have support from your peers too? Did you sort of help each other? Not with the financial side of, we're still going to get paid, but from a sort of emotional support system. Did you find that useful?
Yes. So I think we moved with 15 people in total, the group. And of course, I mean, when you move, you're already doing a lot, even helping carry furniture and stuff. And then this happened. So that was quite, and then usually in chemistry, incidental chemistry, the older PhD students anyway help the younger PhD students. But you're right. I mean, it gives a more coherence.
What advice do you have for people who have to deal with something like this, where a professor or supervisor is heavily involved in, the direction of your research and potentially a big influence on your career passes away? How would you advise people to deal with that?
Yeah, for instance, at our university now in Groningen, it's mandatory that all PhD students have a second supervisor. I still think it's a good thing that, let's say, most universities, I think, now have this. But if your university doesn't have it, maybe you keep an eye open for, let's say that it's not an official second supervisor, but someone who still could help you if, yeah, hopefully never, but something happens.
Katja's career goal at the time, as was the norm in Germany for those studying chemistry, was to find a position in industry. But in 2001, after completing her PhD at the University of Bayreuth in Germany, the financial crisis got in her way.
I mean, there were no jobs at all. So all the people who wrote applications, they didn't even get an answer. And so it was clear that, I mean, if I now write 100 applications, I will not get a job in industry. So it was clear that I either, just wait, I don't know, travel the world or do nothing, or maybe do a postdoc. So I decided for the postdoc.
Why did you decide that?
I didn't want to sit at home. And I mean, this traveling the world, it sounds nice, but I also know myself, this is not, I would probably also get bored. Let alone I wouldn't have the financial means to travel the world. Or you take a completely different job. Maybe you could have gone to, I don't know, financing or anything, but also this I didn't want to. I mean, after all, I mean, you spent 10 years more or less for this study, and then you don't do anything with it. It also sounded strange to me.
Towards the end of the postdoc, did you think again, oh, is it time for me to have another look at industry? Or like how did your career plan go from there?
Yeah, so I thought still about industry, but because I liked research, I mean, it's different when you're a postdoc. You have more freedom, and especially because I had my own money, sort of, I could do whatever I want. I mean, you do still what the group sort of does. But it was really nice. And then yeah, I was undecided. Maybe I should go to university or go to industry. So I actually also applied at industry, but this offer from Groningen came, yeah, quite fast.
So instead of pursuing a career in industry, Katja has now spent her career in academia, following the tenure track system, and ultimately becoming a full professor at Groningen University in 2012. It's not what she envisioned when she started out, and she never imagined she'd do this, but she loved chemistry and still does, and has flourished whilst doing it. Most notably, she was appointed the Knight of the Order of the Dutch Lion in 2023 for her work in green alternative chemistry. For Katja, the major challenges in career path choices might be behind her, but for Mariana Viglino, who studies fossil dolphins and is a researcher at CONICET in Patagonia, Argentina, she's right in the thick of it. Her career goal is to build and develop her own research group as a permanent academic somewhere. Things started well. She did a PhD, a postdoc, and then got a permanent position at CONICET. During this early stage of her career, Mariana said she didn't have any time or energy to plan ahead and think about her future career. Her focus was the work right in front of her. Our conversation starts with me asking her what sort of careers advice she might have been given as a young researcher.
I wouldn't say advice. I was advised as what was expected if I wanted to have a career as a researcher in CONICET, sort of like, if you want to continue this path, you must do this, and that. Going back to my university, it's sort of like we were given the scenario that the only possibility that we have as a job was to be a researcher in CONICET. So that was like, you're supposed to have that goal, and that was the only path. I don't think any other career options were presented to us. That was the path that you have to do. Otherwise, you're sort of like a frustrated biologist. But when I was in my PhD, I was told, like, you're expected to do this, and that. And if you want to continue, basically you have to publish articles like crazy. And that is the sort of insurance that will allow you to continue moving forward.
Okay. And how did you feel when you were given that advice?
I think at that point, I didn't question myself what was the path that I wanted to take. I think I was automatically following what was expected. I didn't question whether that was what I wanted. And when I got to this position as a researcher, I think that was a breaking point for me, where I said, okay, I got to this, what felt like an unattainable goal. I did it, I got here, so now what I'm going to do. I sort of like just followed the steps of a recipe that I was told that was going to give me sort of a successful position. And when I got to that, I was like, okay, what do I want to do now? What sort of professional I want to do? What sort of research group I want to create from now on? What sort of role model I want to be for my students when I have them? That sort of questions, I don't think I ever had the mental space for them until I got to that point in my career.
So what about now then? So now you're in the permanent research position, and to use your words, you have some more time and space, mental space to think. Have you done any career planning since you started this position, and how's it going?
My personality is I'm a bit of a person that needs to have everything organized and plan ahead. I think during my PhD and postdoc, I learned that there is just a bit of things that I can plan ahead. The rest is just life happening. I cannot control everything. So at this point, I wanted to, when I got to this position as a researcher, I started questioning myself what kind of researcher I want to be. And I said, okay, I want to be a researcher who's more inclusive with students, who's more in touch with their mental health and what they would want to do, and sort of show them that there are other options if they want to. And I think I started thinking of those things. I want to continue doing networking with colleagues abroad. That's something that I want to continue doing, which I did before, because those are really wonderful experiences, not only going abroad and working with someone, but also the experience of visiting other countries, the way people work elsewhere, and maybe taking ideas from them. I had all those ideas, and then chaos began in the country. So now all that has to be put on pause, on hold, because everything that I wanted to do is just unattainable for me at the moment. I'm sort of a surviving mode.
The dire situation for scientific research in Argentina is linked to politics, where the government, led by Javier Milei, has made massive cuts to government spending to reduce the deficit and bring down inflation. And one area that has taken a major hit is scientific research. Milei has vowed to demolish CONICET, the government-funded research institute that Mariana works at. And according to a news piece from Nature, the main funder for research projects in the country, the National Agency for the Promotion of Research, Technological Development and Innovation, hasn't put out a call for new projects for almost 2 years. This is why Mariana and many other scientists in Argentina are in survival mode. CONICET has only been paying Mariana her basic salary, which means she's not been able to develop her research or the research group that she was so excited about. So I asked Mariana how she's adapted or reassessed her career plan since all this started.
The sort of survival mode that I'm saying that I'm in means just barely getting my required articles published, and that's it. So I had to rearrange my priorities in terms of, instead of looking for example, for students and try to build a new research group of my own and collaborate with others, I need to first and foremost keep myself, or try to keep myself, which is actually crazy what I'm saying, try to keep myself publishing no matter what, and doing my best with that. And then maybe later on I can focus on the other ideas. But for now, that was sort of the rearrangement of priorities that I had to do.
Having to press pause on your career development like this because of something that is out of your control isn't easy to handle. I asked Mariana how she did it.
Well, for me, going back to therapy was really important. I think whatever tools are good for you, watching your mental health and making sure that you're okay, I think that's first and foremost the most important thing to do. Because if you go crazy, there's no job who's going to take care of that. You need to take care of yourself first, see what you need to be okay, and then comes work and any kind of project that you might have with work, and whatever unexpected thing might come your way. But for me, I think that was the most important, and having my family and my friends and my partner with me, sort of like a supportive net around that chaos. That was also very important.
What Mariana was doing can be explained by something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which can explore people's different motivations for working. It's a psychological illustration of how you cope with different things in life. Careers coach and organisational psychology professor Julia Yates from City St George's University in London, UK, told me.
It talks about people's different motivations and needs in terms of a hierarchy. Right at the top of the hierarchy is what Maslow calls self-actualization. And that's really, as scientists and academics, that's really what we think about a lot in terms of jobs. And self-actualization is trying to find a job that gives you purpose and allows you to be the best version of yourself that can be, and allows your strengths to meet the kind of needs of the world. And, you know, it's all a sort of beautiful, fulfilling, purposeful job. But that's right at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And further down his hierarchy of needs are things like, have you got enough money to feed yourself? Are you safe? Are you, do you have sort of healthy relationships around you? And it's actually impossible, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's impossible to be thinking about self-actualization when you're not confident you've got a roof over your head. So actually, there are sometimes times in our lives when we have to stop thinking about self-actualization and our higher purpose and whether or not we're being deeply fulfilled by work. And we just need to bring some money in. And if we can bring the money in, then we've got food on the table, our family's safe, we've got somewhere to live. And once that's all sorted and safe, then we can go back up to self-actualization at the top and start thinking again about our purpose and whether or not we're kind of, you know, using our strengths in the world in the way that we want to. So I think there's also something, you know, if people are in certain situations, it's absolutely fine to just think, for now, I'm not going to think about whether this is the perfect job. I'm just going to think that this is a job and that is what I need right now.
So Mariana, when I spoke with her earlier this year, was not able to position herself into that top level of Maslow's hierarchy. Instead, she had to think about her other needs, job security and basic survival. Last month, I caught up with Mariana as she was finishing her first week at a 3-month work placement in Germany. I wanted to know how her mindset has changed since she'd arrived in Germany to start her placement.
Even though I've been here only a few days, it has changed dramatically. I think having a different working environment and not having like all the time to think about what if I'm going to make it to the end of the month, I need to cover my expenses, what am I going to do? My colleagues are getting out of their jobs. We don't know what to do. The future is completely uncertain. I think for a little while to be outside of that and just focus on doing science has really brought my creativity. And I think it kind of put me into a lighter mood, into a better mood. I feel like I've put on I left some weight back home for a bit. I do feel guilty about it though. I don't like to feel like this, but it really makes a difference when you have a healthier working environment. But to be completely honest, it has changed me quite a bit. And I think I really missed having a more positive working environment.
Amazing. Well, I'm so pleased to hear that you're feeling much more positive, because it was, you know, it wasn't a good space that you were in earlier this year. So
No.
that's really nice to hear. I'm really pleased for you. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me for this particular podcast? Maybe some advice for anybody who, you know, has these career plans and then through no fault of their own, plans get put on hold or plans get derailed, like how to handle it, how to manage it.
I know it sounds cliche, but try to follow your dreams as much as you can, at least if you have the opportunity to do it. But I would say basically, trust your gut. I mean, if you think academia is the world that you want to be in, I know it's hard. I'm not going to idolize it. It has its own difficulties, but I would advise, if you like it, just go for it and see where that path leads you.
Whatever career path Mariana follows, her experience so far will stand her in good stead and prepare her well for whatever comes next. But sometimes the challenges we face aren't as big as a political shift. Sometimes maybe just a project didn't work out. This is something that Poland-based Tomasz Bowacki faced. He's the Chief AI Officer at Omnicaf and Chief AI Advisor at Seraphine Defence Systems. He started his scientific career in academia, but moved to industry shortly after completing his PhD in computer science in 2013. Whilst there, he learned how to create career plans under the guidance of a manager, who started him off with very rigid plans. But ultimately, that wasn't helpful for him.
My first plans were very rigid, and this was the project I should complete. This was the exact skills I should learn, and it was really detailed, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good because the environment changed dynamically, and there was a situation that part of my plan was participating in the project that never happened. So then you cannot do your plan. And industry is very dynamic. I used to work for big companies, but as well for startups. And startup environment is very quick. It's not easy to plan year ahead what you will be doing. So what changed during my career was that this planning went from the very detailed list of what should you do to the list of different activities, and you don't need to do all of them. So there is a start, there is a destination point, and there is also a list of projects, list of certification, there is a list of people to talk, there is a list of books, papers to read, there is a list of skills to acquire, but this is the journey. So you don't need to do all of this. This is, I would say, this is like lighthouse. It shows you what direction you go, but you don't need to do everything and one after another one to be successful. So this how my plan has changed over the time. It's not anymore about doing everything step by step. It's rather showing the road, but you do not have to accomplish everything.
I like this message from Thomas, that ultimately the planning doesn't have to be, and often it's important that it isn't, too detailed and specific. There are things within your life, your working career, that you cannot control, like the project Thomas was working on before it got cancelled, or the political environment in your country changing like with Mariana, or your supervisor suddenly passing away, as Katja experienced. And over time, Thomas learned.
Planning is more important than plan. So the activity itself, when you discuss about where you are getting the feedback, you are learning about the organization is most important. But also what is important, you are learning over the way. So the more you learn about during the way, you can change your attitude, you can change your plans, you can say, I have tested and I would like to do something different. And this is important. I believe that we should not stick to the plan. It's not about the plan, it's about the planning, it's about the learning.
Today, careers can be pushed off path for many different reasons, whether they're political or health related. And sometimes things will get tough. That's life. It's not always smooth sailing, and we really should never expect it to be either. And these tough times will appear on your CV, whether you had to change jobs suddenly, or you had to take leave to take care of a family or friend, or whether you got sick or just needed the break. Whatever the situation.
Those are all things you can recover from. Everything that you do, every opportunity that you take, you will learn something from and gain something from. Even if it's the most awful experience, you will get through it and you will learn from it. And that will make you sort of clearer about what you want in the future. So actually, sometimes the advice is not to worry about it too much. Just do whatever you have to do. And when you're ready to rethink about it, have a chat with somebody and try and work out how to get yourself back on track. But you will be able to. It will work out.
It's often hard to do, though. So it's easier said than done to not worry.
100%. Yeah, exactly right. When you're in the middle of it, it's very difficult to see the bigger picture. But sometimes that's why you need somebody like me or a podcast like this or going to see a careers advisor to kind of give you that different perspective and to say, actually, it will work out. This will be a blip in your career and eventually you'll find your way again.
When it comes to an interview and people are like, hey, you did this thing on your CV, that's really weird. Like, what was that about? How important is it that you come prepared enough to the interview to explain it and explain what you've learned and how you've done and why this is? And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I think that's such a good point, because employers do look at your CV, or they look at your kind of employment history, and they do notice that you've had a few years out, or perhaps you did a slightly unexpected job that doesn't really fit, or perhaps you did a job and were only there for 3 months and they wondered to themselves, I wonder what happened there. And they might well ask, and even if they don't ask, you might want to think about whether you volunteer the information, because they're probably questioning it in their mind, even if they don't feel they can ask explicitly. And I think employers are human, and almost every employer who will be interviewing you will have got something a little bit unexpected in their own employment history. So it won't be a great shock to them to hear that, you took a job that didn't work out. But I think the key thing is just to talk to them about what you learned from it. Perhaps why you made the mistake, if it was a mistake on your part in the first instance. Perhaps you didn't research it enough. Perhaps you weren't very self-aware. Perhaps you were seduced by the massive paycheck that they were offering to you. And then talk about, and I think owning it's really important. So saying, I did something wrong here is something that employers are quite open to. And I think that tends to go down a little bit better than saying, they misled me, or they were wrong, or, something external. I think if you can own it yourself, that's always impressive. And if you can explain what you did wrong and what you've learned from it, I think any employer worth their salt would understand that, and it would make some sense to them.
In our 6th and final episode of this series on career planning, I'm sharing a conversation I had with Professor Dame Ottoline Leiser. We spoke in December 2024, when she was still the CEO of UKRI. We talk about her career, her time at UKRI, and her strong beliefs on how academia needs to learn to diversify their career paths. But before you go, here's our sponsored slot from the International Science Council on career development for early and mid-career researchers in an ever-evolving scientific landscape. Thanks for listening. I'm Julie Gould.
Hello and welcome to this podcast, presented in partnership with the International Science Council with the support of the China Association for Science and Technology. I'm science journalist Izzy Clark. The future of science relies on the well-being of early to mid-career researchers, that they feel supported in their workplace so that collaboratively their fields can continue to evolve. But with funding and publication demands, to name a few, how is that possible? And what else is needed to mentally support researchers? To help answer these all-important questions, I'm joined by Yense Flores Puerto, co-chair of the Global Young Academy and a Marie Curie Career Fellow at the Institute for Protein Design and the Cancer Research Centre at University College Cork.
Hi, Izzy.
And Laurie Foster, the president of the International Association of Applied Psychology and professor of organizational psychology at North Carolina State University.
Hi, Izzy. Great to be here.
Well, I think today's conversation is an important one. We're talking about mental health and well-being. So let's start with the question for both of you. Why do we need to rethink resilience in the research ecosystem, especially when it comes to early and mid-career researchers?
Sure. I think we're talking about how to prevent things like burnout, how to foster resilience and thriving. And I suppose I have two answers. So one is it's simply the humane thing to do. We have to take care of ourselves and we have to take care of each other. And then answer number two, if we need a business case, is it's the right thing to do from the standpoint of the advancement of our sciences. If we are in an ecosystem and we are burning out some of our resources, then we are not going to be able to sustain growth and productivity in that ecosystem.
I agree with Laurie. Science will benefit from scientific systems that can help encourage the different abilities and the different characteristics and the strengths that every researcher has. And being burnt out or this hyper competition, I don't think that it benefits some of the characteristics of certain researchers, because at the end of the day, science, it's done by teams. You need like this combination of different abilities and strengths to build a strong team in science.
And Laurie, what would you say are some of the pressures that early and mid-career researchers face?
Yeah, thanks, Izzy. And I'm going to be really interested in Jensi's perspective on this as well, given that she is at an earlier career stage than I am. But it can be workload, particularly in the context of the other life pressures that may be going on. That could be anything from paying off student loans to raising a family to building your social network with your friend groups and all of those things, maintaining your physical activity and exercise, getting enough sleep. So all of those things can be factors in addition to the climate or the culture of the work environment, right? And we're going to see some variability there, but for many early and mid-career researchers, that's a real factor that can be a barrier.
And Jensi, if you're happy to talk about this, have you experienced any pressures, to secure funding or publishing or anything like that that might have impacted your well-being in this stage of your career?
Yeah, especially coming from the global south, where there's less resources available. You have to compete harder, for getting the few opportunities that are there. People who have less opportunities are at disadvantage. Right now, the current systems, what they evaluate are opportunities rather than ability. So this has definitely impacted my life. Even in the global north, researchers live in certain precarity. The contracts are usually just temporary, and the salaries, are very low in early stages. And there's a lot of insecurity of what is going to happen next. You have to compete for the funding or the positions that will let you advance your career. Then you're always being hyper productive, and that results in burnouts. Or in my personal case, I can say that definitely it takes most of my time. It can affect your health, your sleep, for example. And if a woman, for example, has a family, it will be super difficult.
That's also a lot to take on in addition to academic work and research, which in itself is, a tasking job on top of all of those other things to contend with. So in those moments of stress, was there anything or anyone that helped you regain a sense of balance or peace during those more difficult times?
Yes. Well, I would say one, mentors. I have been lucky to be supported by my mentors who, in between grants, for example, gave me a contract for a couple of months to help me not be without a job for 2 or 3 months, which is especially dangerous for me because my visa depends on my job. Then my peers, for example, I am lucky that I joined the Global Young Academy, GYA, because I can interact with different people from around the world and hear their perspectives, and as well as they hear me. And another thing, I got involved in something called the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment. This gave me a lot of hope and purpose. It aims to change the way that we evaluate researchers to kind of make a space and room for all kind of contributions, not only publications.
And I guess that goes back to what you were saying earlier about having the diversity of different strengths and skills in your team as well and sharing that with your peers. So, Laurie, from a psychological science perspective, what are some of the common and potentially overlooked signs of burnout or mental strain in research environments?
Yeah, well, I really appreciated a lot of what Jensi was saying there about joining organizations, joining associations, because to your question, Izzy, I think one of those signs might be withdrawal. If you see somebody who's beginning to isolate a little bit more, withdrawal, perfectionism, cynicism, emotional numbness, drops in curiosity, right? Things like that could be symptomatic and problematic. And some of us are lucky enough to join a lab that is not only productive, but supportive, and some of us aren't. And so then what? What do you do when you're not in an environment that feels psychologically safe or has a culture that's productive and supportive both? And what I found, especially looking back, similar to what Jensi is saying, is that joining organizations, associations, professional associations did mean a world of good because it fulfilled both needs. It was a way to develop a network, contribute professionally, And I was making friends, and finding people with common interests. And I found that it also accommodates a variety of different career stages if you join the right organization or pick the right ones. So I really want to emphasize that important point as well.
If a listener sees that a colleague is struggling or they themselves actually feel like things are getting a bit much, what should they do?
Certainly, if somebody is, at risk for harming themselves or others, it's important to seek help immediately. If it is something other than that, where you start to feel that cynicism creeping in, you start to feel that exhaustion, the lack of personal accomplishment, like I don't feel like I'm very good at my job, I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything worthwhile. If you see those early signs of burnout creeping in, it might be stepping in and just normalizing it. When we're talking about it with other people, like, hey, it looks like you might be struggling. Do you want to talk a little bit about what might be going on? That level of social support for ourselves, building in some of the strategies that we've been discussing, can go a long way. Yancy, I'm curious as to what you think from your personal experience.
Yeah, peer support is always very important. As a member of the lab, simple things like let's go for a coffee and chat, just to interact and just trying to distract from what it is, because that person has been so hyper-focused on the work, it might just help the brain to kind of restart or something like that. I find also that for me, exercising and being in contact with nature has helped me a lot.
Yeah, the exercise, the nature, the sleep, the nutrition, we cannot overestimate how important those are. We know about the psychological benefits of gratitude, really taking a pause, taking a step back and saying, like, what am I grateful for? Who am I grateful for? And even, journaling that. Even if you never show it to anyone, like, we know that this can have positive impacts for ourselves individually. And of course, if you share that, then it has positive impacts to the person that you're grateful for.
Yeah. With that in mind, what can research institutions do differently to support healthier and more sustainable career paths, especially for early and mid-career researchers? Yancy, do you want to start on this?
Yes. Well, I think that if institutions start recognizing that there is no one size fits all, it will be helpful towards careers that universities not only consider different evaluation for the positions, but also recognize that nowadays science is done by different profiles. There's not like one rigid path in academia. There's other roles that can be incorporated. For example, it's becoming more important to have data managers, project managers, and science communicators, or who integrates the research that is done by the university to policymakers. And all these roles are important and are very important for the scientific system. And they right now not always exist.
Yeah. And Laurie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the first thing I would encourage institutions to do is to make sure that their reward structure is aligned with the long view. If organizations are hoping for long-term productivity, collaboration, innovation, creativity, then that's what they need to reward. So many times they're rewarding competition, short-term wins, quick publications and as many as you can get. Two, there's something called the job demands resources model. And Yancy, you've had me thinking about it during this conversation today. So we could think broadly about what are the demands of the roles and what are the resources. And those demands can be both demands with respect to acquiring grants, demands with respect to publications, or even interpersonal demands, right, that you're having in your lab, in your environment. And then what are the resources? You used that word, Yancy, earlier, to meet those demands. And those could be internal resources, they could be external resources, but really looking to make sure that our early and mid-career researchers have the resources externally and internally that are needed to meet those demands. And then the third and final thing that I'll say in answer to this one is maybe less at the institutional level and more at the level of the lab, is to create that psychologically safe environment. That's the environment that Yancy was describing, where each team member can play to their strengths, where they're not afraid of getting ridiculed or punished for thinking outside of the box.
And so what advice would you both give to early and mid-career researchers who are struggling, especially in perhaps competitive or underfunded research environments? Yancy, what do you think?
I would just say if they cannot find a support within their own lab or a small circle, then to look a bit farther to the university, and then if not the university, to other communities to get this support. There are more opportunities. The skills that we acquire in research are also very transferable.
And Laurie?
For starters, I would say just know that you're not alone. If you're struggling, you are not alone. Many, if not all, people go through at different stages of their career. It's not a weakness. And then I'll also add two very practical things. One is focus on what's within your control, right? Your habits, your values, your boundaries. And then I would also say track small wins, because in this environment, it's often the big grant that feels like the win or the publication, but it takes a long time. And so break that down, celebrate, and track those small wins.
Yeah, it's simple but effective. Thank you both so much for joining me today. If you're an early or mid-career researcher and you want to be part of a community, then join the International Science Council Forum for Emerging Scientists. Visit the website council.science/forum. I'm Izzy Clark, and next time we'll be discussing the benefits of science evolving beyond academic laboratories and institutions. Until then.